Coming up, I'll be speaking with Mike Hazard, also known as Media Mike. That's on the St. Paul Forum coming up next. Welcome to the St. Paul Forum. I'm John Forde. This week I'll be speaking with Mike Hazard, also known as Media Mike. Welcome, Mike.
How are you?
Very good. How did you get the name Media Mike?
I gave it to myself.
Okay.
I was invited by the a director of the Heart of the Beast Theater when they moved into their theater on Lake Street, Lucinda Anderson. And she said, Mike, you make pictures of masks. Would you like to show these masks in the theater? And I thought, just what I wanted to do something that wasn't dealing with this thing, TV. And so it just came at a good time. And so I pulled this mask show together, mask photographs, and I needed a name. And so I thought mask, museum, and then I thought Mike's Mask Museum, and then I thought, why not? Media, Mike's Mask Museum. And I just had so much fun with it that it felt like a good name for me. I love all kinds of media. I love television, I love newspapers, I love books, I love performing, I love music, I love photographs. All the ways that human beings communicate interest me. And so Media Mike is a way of trying to describe both who I am and what I love. And
you've been involved a very long time in the social aspect, almost like the political aspect of developing, for example, this institution, which is now St. Paul Neighborhood Network, but was formerly St. Paul Access. And you were there at the founding.
I was. We were lucky in the Upper Midwest to have a nationally recognized media access center in University Community Video in Rarig Center over on the University of Minnesota campus. And that's where I learned how to make television, starting in 1975. And so when the Twin Cities started to go into the franchising process to pick a contractor to do cable in the cities, the director, Sally Fisher, decided to have a workshop and to try to educate people as to what this new medium, cable television, could do for the community. And so she brought in really the godfather, the founding father of cable access, George Stoney from New York, to come to town and teach us what cable is, what access could be, and how to work with the community to create a community alive access center. And Sally, who I love and still am in touch with, said, you are in charge of St. Paul, because I lived in St. Paul. And so I took this workshop with George Stoney, and I was entranced by this individual. He's a filmmaker, teacher, or was now. He just passed away this summer. But he was a filmmaker, teacher, and media activist. And had a kind of gentle strength which appealed to me. And I took his workshop, and then I began as a citizen coordinator for agitating for community access in St. Paul. And that created Cable Access St. Paul. And now we know it as SPIN.
Okay. Part of your love for George Stoney, or your fascination with him, manifested itself in a film you made about him.
The film I'm making about
Oh, it's in process?
Yes.
Okay, but we're gonna roll a clip here. Why don't you introduce us to it?
This is a piece of a film which is a portrait, a documentary portrait of George Stoney. And I'm not even sure what it's called yet, but let's roll it, and it kind of sets itself up.
Okay.
How much time are you spending on the computer these days?
Not a great deal, but I hate it.
I still don't know what phone number I'll have in Brazil.
The picture is really from here, looking at all of you people.
Yeah, really, it is. Oh, that's great.
That's lovely. Yes,
Thank
good.
you.
See, I think every film has a point of view. You're recording this, you're not seeing the rest of the room. You're not recording the fact that Betty may come in soon. You're not recording all the kinds of things that are happening around. If you panned around this room, you'd see a lot of strange objects. The observational filmmaker would say that these objects on their own are illustrating my interest in life. But I say that only when you know the background, where they came from, how they were associated with me, etc., would you be able to understand more than just the simple view of them. This object here was made by Betty's daughter, Jennifer. It's been here since she and her two daughters spent almost a year with me in this small apartment. It was one of the happiest years of my life. When she and her, I think the kids were 5 and 7. And it was just like living with people on a small ship. This is Robert Osborne's, the well-known cartoonist's work of Chaplin's. I'm doing this to illustrate how one method of getting the variety in somebody's life, simply by having them say, where did you get this object? And having those objects, in effect, talk, because each of these objects has a story.
George seems like he was an absolutely fascinating guy. He just passed away this summer.
He did, at 96. And when he passed away, he was still working on 3 major films. He taught at NYU the spring semester. And he was still on the board of Manhattan Neighborhood Network.
At 96?
At 96
That's
years
amazing.
old. And I connected with George. I hadn't seen him from 1980 when he came to the Twin Cities to 1999, although I had kept in touch. But in 1999, he invited me to go to New York as part of a film screening that he was organizing to show the film I was making about Eugene McCarthy. And when I went out to New York and started watching George in person again, at that time, I can't do the math, 96 minus 13.
83.
83. He was still, he was just so full of energy that I invited myself into his life. I said, George, is anyone making a portrait of you? I like to make portraits of people. And he said, no. And I said, well, I would love to try. And he said, well, I don't know why, and I don't know why not. And that was just enough to start. And over the course of the last 13 years, I went out to New York 2 or 3 times a year, filmed him both in New York and various other towns, and became his archivist and helped organize his papers and distribution of his films and that sort of thing. And I'm very close now to finishing. It'll be a half-hour film, which will be given away through the community media system for free. And there'll be a DVD with another half hour of various scenes. But it's a portrait of George. And I was interested in George because, like George, I am a filmmaker who teaches filmmaking, who also gets involved in some media activism. And so his life was of interest to me. How do you balance those things and live a good life? And so I never failed to take away something of substance every time I got together with George. His teaching was interesting, and as a teacher, I tried to learn from him. I earn a living by teaching. Does it surprise you at all I can't make a living making films?
Yeah.
I thought by now, you know, I'm 60 years old. I thought by now I would...
I figured that part out, but yeah.
But actually what I figured out is that no one does.
Yeah.
Yes, we have an Errol Morris and a Michael Moore, and we have a couple stars who do make some money. But even Errol Morris directs commercials.
Yeah.
And so how do you make the films that you want to make? And I've been very lucky making one film after another that I've wanted to make. I don't work on commission. I choose the films I want to make, and then I make them. But the way I do that is I teach other people how to make films. And I work largely as an artist in the schools. And so from George, I learned some about how he teaches. And one of the main lessons I learned from George is that you make things with people. Whether you learn with people. Whether you're making a film, you make it with them. Whether you're teaching, you learn with them. And so I work at about 10 or 12 different schools a year and make films with kids of all ages, from preschoolers on up to elders. And I brought one example that that I love. And this is a film about Paul Wellstone. I was in Paul's first class at Carleton in 1969, and I kept in touch. I admired him. I didn't think he was such a good teacher. But, you know, it was a Monday morning class in political science, not my field, really, and not, anyway, Monday morning in 1969, tough.
Yeah.
But he got arrested with us when we protested the Cambodian invasion in the spring of 1970. And I was impressed that this professor went to jail with us. Yeah. And so it was a life lesson there. But I had this notion, I kept in touch with Paul, and when he was senator, I lived on Ramsey Hill, and he used to, when I was waiting for the school bus with my daughter, Sonia, he used to walk by because he was working out at the university club while he was senator. And always hello, he'd take a moment and talk, and how's school to Sonia, all this. And we agreed that one day I was going to film him working out, because I just had this instinct, gut thing, that I had heard that he worked out. And I just had this sense that a film of Paul working out would be powerful. And I only wanted to ask one thing: what keeps you going? What keeps you going while he was, you know, doing whatever he does? Well, 10 years ago, October 25th, 2002, the plane went down and we lost Paul. We never did film that scene. And I felt like I wanted to do something. And some good friends were making a film about Paul, Hardworking Pictures, Dan Luke and Laurie Stern and Pam Colby. And so that wasn't a film that I had to worry about. It was being done. But since, as I say, I work with kids, I thought maybe I could make a film with kids that would be different. And so I looked for a school and found a great school in Lake Country Montessori School in Minneapolis, and a great teacher, Mindy Holte. And we made a film over the course of a school year called The Magic Green School Bus. And I knew that we were getting on a special trip when Mindy told me how she set it up. The first day that the kids entered her classroom, it's a 3-grade
cluster,
yeah, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. She said she had made a 5-foot-high green question mark, and it was just off in the corner of the room. And so when the kids came in, no other, you know, there was nothing else except this big green question mark. And that was their first exposure to the project. And by the end of the year, we had made this amazing film, bringing Many people that Paul worked with, his media guy, Congressman Ramstad, various people, either to the classroom or we went out, and Bill Holm and Mark Anderson.
And we're going to show a short clip of that right now.
We're going to show a little short, actually, I want to show the whole scene for this one, okay? It's only 4 minutes long.
Okay.
It's called Dear Paul.
Okay.
And near the end of this half-hour film, we got on a school bus, or on a city bus, and we went to the cemetery where Paul and Sheila are buried. And Rick Kahn had taught us that it's a Jewish tradition to bring something to the grave to remember that person. And so every kid thought of something special to bring, and they wrote letters to Paul, Dear Paul. And this scene with music by Mason Jennings, which he was generous enough to let us use, is the scene in the film called Dear Paul.
Okay, we'll take a look at that now.
The buses is coming.
Rick Kahn suggested we go visit Lakewood Cemetery, where Sheila and Paul are buried. He also taught us that it is a Jewish tradition to honor the dead with small stones or other gifts. So before we went, each of us thought of something to bring. And we wrote letters to Paul.
October morning, little plane on the forest floor, up on the TV between a rerun and another war. Here in a hotel, trying to make some sense of this, 2,000 miles from my family in Minneapolis. Hey Senator, I wanna say all the things you fought for did not die here today. Hey Senator, I'm gonna do all the things I can to live my life more like you live.
I think it's good that people put something from their own, like from themselves on here.
I bought Paul Wellstone an apple because I thought that he was a good teacher, and I think every good teacher deserves an apple.
Oh my gosh.
I think that was Eleanor.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that is precious.
And it says a teacher.
I know, because you know you always give apples to the teacher.
Yep. Dear Paul, in my life you have never left. You will never leave, because you can't, because we are still fighting for peace.
Dear Paul, I gave you a red rock. I chose this rock because it looks like a real heart, and I think you have a love and care for everything. The thing you taught me was how to live my life with integrity. I'm very, very grateful for that gift. Your little Republican friend, Spencer Summers.
Dear Paul Wellstone, I admire you for speaking up even when people called you embarrassingly liberal. I think if God brought anybody up from the dead with their body restored, it would be you, because our country is in need of your help and advice. Sincerely, Laura.
Let's all each step forward one more time and touch the stone, and then we'll get ready to go.
Dear Paul Wellstone, I couldn't figure out what to bring, so I brought my spirit. I think that is all I needed to give. Sincerely, Jonah B.
So you were obviously pretty good friends with Senator Wellstone, and this film ends with the kids all around the rock.
And it was a beautiful moment, because it comes at the end of a school year of this class of 20-some kids and their teacher and me going at this story from all different points of view and angles. Mindy, the teacher, wasn't sure that if she read Conscience of a Liberal that it was going to touch these kids. Okay? I mean, they're 10 years old.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So she started by trying to just read a little bit of the introduction. The kids had a revolt. They said, we want to hear the whole thing. And she read the entire Conscience of a Liberal out loud. You know, they have part of the class day is some reading out loud. She read the whole thing all the way through. And so by the end of this school year, these kids were really profoundly touched by the powerful lesson that Paul had given us of his life. You walk your talk. And we all do better when we all do better. These are really simple things. They're almost, you know, platitudes. They're so simple. But a couple impacts that touched me. There was a student races for office, you know, after this. And first of all, several kids who had never wanted to run and represent the public good before now wanted to represent the public. They wanted to work to make things better.
Yeah.
And they had platforms that reflected Paul's influence, which was interesting to see. But one other anecdote, there was a kid who has Asperger's syndrome, and I had sensed that she was, you know, kind of a delicate, shy person. She wrote the most incredible Dear Paul letter, but she couldn't quite have she didn't dare read it until first we had a kid read it for her, and then she read it in the dark, alone, just me and her, and we didn't have to use it unless she thought it was okay. And her voice is one of those voices that reads a Dear Paul letter. It makes me tear up now. It was so powerful. But the impact on her of her bravery to have the courage to read that out loud changed her own life, I was told, when I came back and talked to Mindy the year after. And she said that experience of speaking out and becoming part of the movie, which was then broadcast on public television, was so empowering that she really blossomed as a person. So what I love about media is not just the ways that you can learn about the world, because I learned a lot about Paul by that focus that the camera, as you follow it around, you see things, and that's why it's worth all the trouble of all the wires and all that. You get to see things and then share them. But it can also have a really profound impact on the people who are telling those stories. Not just the people who are watching the stories.
Not just the viewers, but the producers as well.
The producers and the subjects. And this was another lesson that George really tried to drive home, is that we as filmmakers have to live ethical lives, because what we do can hurt people. And it's really important to be aware of the fact that when you put someone out there, that it can have all kinds of other blowback. And anyway, so this one kid, just a sweet kid, really became empowered by it. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why community media is so important, because it becomes an opening for the community to express itself and also to change things, even if it's in little ways.
It seems like your work would have so much a broader appeal now with everybody having essentially a camcorder on their phone. That the techniques and understandings, I mean, you came in with one of the most fundamental expressions, that it's putting sound and images together
Right.
in ways that people maybe don't anticipate, but always have an impact, and that those are choices.
Right.
It seems like the content that you teach, not the mechanics of editing, but the content
Right.
that you're teaching, should be taught to everybody.
Well, I believe that we don't understand what the experience of viewing does. I was telling you before that the Wellstone film opens up with a young boy saying with a girl's voice through a lip sync exercise, "My name is Paul Wellstone, and I approve this message." And it just cracks the kids up every time. When I teach, I always have a lip sync exercise.
Mike, we got to wrap up here. Is there a website you wanted to plug?
It's the Center for International Education,
Okay.
thecie.org.
Okay.
THECIE.org.
You are doing very noble work, and thank you so much for appearing with us.
You're welcome.
All right. I've been talking with Mike Hazard, also known as Media Mike. That's all we've got time for. You can see it all week long on the St. Paul Forum.